Subaru's day begins in Earlham Village, where he leads morning radio exercises to help the villagers recover their spirits after earlier tragedies. And this small routine becomes a warm habit that makes children and adults smile while also giving Subaru a sense of belonging. Emilia often walks with him afterwards, and these quiet minutes carry a gentle promise that they can share normal days, even with politics, wounds, and difficult duties looming over them. Returning to Roswell Manor one morning, Subaru finds an impressive land dragon and carriage waiting outside and learns more about land dragon's practical blessings, like wind resistance that protects the carriage and anyone within its range while traveling. A refined older gentleman introduces himself as Wilhelm, outwardly a courteous driver from House Karsten, but clearly a seasoned warrior by posture and gaze, and Subaru's light banter with tea service only half hides that he is trying to understand the deeper reasons for the visit. Wilhelm's partner is Felix Ferris Argyle, a cat-eared healer with a playful tongue who nonetheless immediately reads Subaru's damaged internal monocirculation and hints that proper treatment is urgent if Subaru is to stop hurting himself by using magic in his state. After the envoy leaves, Roswell confirms Emilia has been summoned to the capital for the royal selection and explains that Ferris will be the one to treat Subaru's gate injury because Ferris's water magic is on a near unmatched level, making the capital trip essential for Subaru's health, even if he is told to stay out of politics. Roswell sets a hard boundary that Subaru is traveling for healing only, not to meddle in the selection, which frustrates Subaru because Emilia has quietly stretched herself to arrange his treatment despite faction lines, making him feel like a burden at the very moment he wants to protect her. The group departs in a fine carriage, Roswell, Emilia, Rem, and Subaru, while Ram and Beatrice remain at the mansion, and Subaru's happy excitement about the fantasy of a dragon-drawn ride is constantly checked by reminders to behave and respect both the dragon's limits and the capital's order. On the road, Subaru learns the practical details of travel magic, such as how the wind-repelling blessing keeps Rem safe on the front bench and why sticking his arm too far out would fling him off, which he promptly proves by nearly falling to his death before Rem yanks him back with her chain. In the bustling capital, Subaru heads straight to keep a promise with the scar-faced fruit vendor Cadman, buying apples and repaying a small debt from his very first day in the city, and the merchant's gruff kindness in tossing in an extra fruit makes Subaru glow with the feeling that keeping promises matters. Emilia then brings Subaru to the garrison so she can contact the castle with a communication media, and there a polished knight named Julius greets her with perfect courtesy, immediately rubbing Subaru the wrong way with his refined, calm, and hard-to-penetrate smile. Emilia decides to go inside with Julius and tells Subaru to wait because she fears he will see something he hates. But Subaru's restlessness and hurt pride carry him to a nearby alley, where he stumbles into a confrontation with a breathtaking woman in crimson who treats danger like a stage. The woman is Priscilla, and she speaks as if the world itself bends to her convenience, provoking the thugs with noble arrogance, and then pivoting to Subaru without the slightest thanks, as if he is simply the next piece of furniture to move. Subaru tries to help by bluffing the thugs with Reinhardt's name, which scares them off, but Priscilla instantly turns the situation into gambling over Subaru's apples, cutting fruit with casual elegance and stripping his bag one loss at a time with nerve and a frightening instinct for how to catch an opponent on his reflexes. Her one-armed, helmeted vassal Al appears, calls her princess, and treats her whims as a fact of life. And on that same whim, Priscilla sweeps Subaru into the palace with her, having decided the world will, of course, allow Appleboy to pass if she chooses it. The throne room overwhelms Subaru with an expanse of light, a dragon-shaped throne, rows of royal guard knights on the left, civil officials and noble elders on the right, and a small line of striking girls in the center, among whom he recognizes Emilia under her hood. Roswell appears near Emilia with his sing-song air and quietly makes it possible for Subaru to remain, noting that without Priscilla's umbrella and a stitched crest, Subaru might have been thrown out, or worse, by strict gate protocol. Emilia's face tightens when she sees Subaru arrive under Priscilla's shadow, and the fragile trust between them begins to strain before the council even speaks, setting the stage for a conflict between careful rules and raw feeling. Captain Marcus calls the gathering to solemn order, and the elder Miklatov explains the gravity of the moment. The royal family died of plague half a year earlier. The covenant with the holy dragon must be renewed by a dragon maiden, and the dragon jewels have selected candidates to stand for the kingdom's future. The chamber's ritual is strict and heavy, yet sparks fly between personalities as soon as speeches begin, and even Roswell's clowning tone does not reduce the weight of law that demands exact conduct before throne and dragon. Among the candidates, Emilia stands with calm in her posture, but pain in her eyes, while Priscilla seems bored with everything because she assumes victory as a matter of fate and style. Crusch Karsten, backed by Ferris, speaks with iron confidence about the Dragon Covenant's blessings in war, plague, and famine, then asks the room if relying on such power for every crisis has made the kingdom soft and complacent, trading will and effort for guaranteed safety. Her point is not to despise the past, but to challenge the present. Depending on dragon help as a given has dulled courage and responsibility, and she would lead a nation that stands on its own feet rather than rest under a borrowed roof forever. Even Miklatov's sharp rebuke melts into thoughtful silence, as Crusch explains that loyalty and identity are not meant to be permanent crutches, and that prosperity can breed habits that rot judgment over time. Anastasia Hoshin follows with a frank claim that her motive is greed, saying that when she owns something, she tirelessly improves it. So if the kingdom becomes hers, she will not discard it, but grow it, just as she grew her company with discipline and nerve. Julius, her knight, expands this into policy with an unusually blunt admission. The kingdom's finances are precarious after repeated clashes and famine, and pretending otherwise is precisely why affairs have stagnated. So a leader who understands trade and money must take the reins. His polished rhetoric stings elders who do not like dirty laundry aired in public, but his pairing with Anastasia builds a picture of sober reconstruction, grounded in ownership, responsibility, and fiscal rigor. When Emilia steps forward, Bordeaux, an elder, spits the word half-demon, ties her to a hated legend, and blasts her as a danger to the kingdom, pushing prejudice into the open so hard that the room's air freezes around her. Roswell then calls Emilia a stalking horse, saying 5 candidates are needed to start the selection and implying she is there to fill the role because the Dragon Jewel chose her, not to actually win, which wounds Emilia's dignity and ignites Subaru's fury. As Roswell threatens to burn Subaru for his outburst in such a sacred hall, a pale blue glow blocks the fireball in a shock of steam, and a small gray cat descends as a biting cold sweeps the chamber, and knights raise their swords with genuine fear. Miklatov murmurs the title Apocalypse Beast of Eternal Frost, and Roswell confirms that Puck is indeed a great spirit of old and is contracted to Emilia, a fact that abruptly shifts the council's mood from scorn to careful calculation. Puck apologizes in a flat, almost mocking tone for nearly freezing everyone and admits that the showcase was a deliberate speech to make Emilia's camp's power and restraint visible, which both humiliates and sobers elders who had jeered at Emilia moments earlier. Emilia then steps in herself and says she wants only fair treatment, promises she will not use Puck as a weapon to seize power, and asks to be judged as Emilia, not as a witch's mirror, showing a kind of restraint that strikes even a hostile elder as worthy of respect. Bordeaux, shaken, apologizes formally for earlier insults, and concedes that her demand for fair treatment is understandable and noble, even if public sentiment will be difficult. And Marcus quickly moves the agenda forward to keep the chamber from collapsing into feud. Priscilla's earlier casual malice had already pushed Emilia to the edge by saying a silver-haired half-elf should apologize for being born. But Al's quick realism pulls Priscilla back before she turns the room into a battlefield with Reinhard. A ringing coin on metal from Miklatov gathers attention again, and with Emilia's plea recorded, the council returns to the core task of hearing each camp's case and establishing the method and schedule for the selection. The biggest disruption arrives when Reinhard returns with a shackled, old man Raman Felt, a slum girl Subaru knows, and presents Felt as a candidate because a Dragon Jewel recognized her, which detonates outrage among officials who cannot accept a waif near the throne. Miklatov directs attention to proof, and Reinhard reveals an old palace scandal, an abduction 14 years ago of a royal child, while people gasp at Felt's blonde hair and crimson eyes, traits peculiar to the royal bloodline. even though no absolute proof can be recovered. Rickard accuses Reinhard of stage managing a fake, but Reinhard places his sword on the floor and swears, and Miklatov frames the moment as fate, guiding the room to accept that qualification by Dragon Jewel and the weight of Reinhard's oath are enough to proceed. Felt's entrance then flips from legal to human when Old Man Rom begs pathetically for his life, making himself look like a coward, which disgusts observers and threatens to sink Felt's credibility by pure association with slum shame. The girl explodes with an insult that silences the hall and then delivers a speech of sharp pride, saying she hates nobles, knights, and the kingdom, and that she will smash rotten pillars to let fresh air in, even if it means attacking everything the room thinks is sacred. Miklatov, unruffled, asks Reinhard what he thinks, and Reinhard admits her plan is still fantasy, but vows to give her full support until the day her words reach all people, sealing his commitment to be the sword for a master who would break and rebuild. Marcus tries to end the disturbance by removing Rom, but Felt orders him set free, and when the captain hesitates, Reinhard slices the manacles in a blink, not with a blade but with a solemn gesture that declares before the entire room that Reinhard's sword belongs to Felt. Felt then laughs and declares she will join the selection after all, not because she wants to play princess, but because if she runs now, she loses her right to leave a rotten place with her pride intact, which even Crusch nods at despite differences in tone. The council formalizes that the 5 candidates have assembled: Crusch Karsten with Ferris, Anastasia Hoshin with Julius, Priscilla Burial with Al, Emilia without a knight yet, and Felt with Reinhard, and sets a schedule leading to a Dragon Friend ceremony 3 years hence, with 1 month before it as the selection finish line. Through all of this, Priscilla yawns at excess baggage and says it does not matter who is unworthy because only she will remain at the end, while Al keeps her from picking fights that even he knows would be suicidal, given Reinhard's presence. The elders, knights, and clerks slowly return to ritual tone under Miklatov's direction, but the hall cannot unhear Felt's vow to tear down the kingdom or Emilia's insistence on fairness, and even the most polished speeches now carry the sting of those 2 plain declarations. Subaru, who has no rank and no shield beyond his own mouth, is at the center of this storm by timing and temper, with every misstep drawing eyes that measure his words as if they were blades cutting at the dignity of the hall. In the lull after the loudest shocks, Ferris and Reinhard find Subaru to say Rom will be fine and to check Subaru's condition, and Ferris's cheerful tone masks real medical attention as he rehearses the plan Emilia arranged for top-tier healing. Subaru realizes Emilia crossed factions to pay for Ferris's treatment of his gait, a costly and humbling favor, on the very eve of the selection, and this makes him feel heavier with guilt because it is proof she is protecting him while he keeps trying to protect her in the wrong ways. Julius then appears, elegant and cold, and invites Subaru to the parade square to teach him what proper conduct and real capacity mean in halls where vows and swords define right and wrong. At the garrison's training ground, knights gather in rows as Ferris agrees to referee and Reinhard urges restraint, but Julius insists that standing before the throne to insult knighthood requires a correction from the knight he insulted. The duel is fought with wooden swords, but it is a beating, not a contest. Julius's precise steps and clean strikes drop Subaru again and again until laughter fades around the yard because the crowd realizes this is a lesson carried by pain rather than a spectacle. Subaru tries a trick with sand and switching wasters, but Julius flows through the surprise and punishes him cleanly until Subaru's mind shrinks to one last hit that he believes might repay everything. A blow that never changes reality when it lands on air. Ferris later reports to Captain Marcus that bones, cuts, and even teeth have been fully restored, and that only the kind of wound a heart takes will need time if you can command, and Marcus quietly summons Julius to a sober office to address conduct. Julius offers his sword for banishment, showing that he knows he pushed too far, but Marcus suspends him for 5 days and keeps the blade, weighing order, necessity, and excess in a judgment that recognizes both the mercy and the cruelty embedded in Julius's choice. Ferris's teasing commentary hides a steel logic that many bitter hotheads might have killed Subaru in some side corridor if anger fermented. So a controlled and survivable lesson by a knight who would stop was, in the ugly arithmetic of power, the safer path for all. Back in the palace's corridors, debate about candidates hardens into lines. Ferris praises Crusch as the fittest to be king. Julius pledges Anastasia's rise, and both men carry their faith like steel, meant to build an ordered tomorrow. Al trails behind Priscilla with jokes that defang a tyrant's mood swings, knowing that her decisions can move lives like game pieces, and that Subaru is standing there at all because an abel and a whim tilted the world in his favor for one afternoon. Reinhard remains a shining boundary that few will cross, a quiet presence that stops Priscilla's violence with one polite sentence and makes even the boldest nobles weigh their words more carefully before the sword's saint. Earlier in the throne room, Subaru tried to hold Emilia's hand with words and failed in the worst way. He declared himself Emilia's knight before the whole order, and Julius turned this into a merciless lecture about what knighthood truly requires. Julius says a knight needs loyalty, power, and the capacity to protect with force, not just feelings. And he calls Subaru's self-appointment an insult that drags down not only Subaru's worth, but the dignity of those around him in a hall meant to stand above whim. The knights salute behind Julius in perfect ceremony to remind Subaru that these men and women train body and spirit for this life. And Julius asks if Subaru is prepared for the weight of this title, which leads to Subaru's stubborn answer that he will make Emilia king even if he lacks strength now. Emilia then places her hand on Subaru's wrist and says in a voice like ice that the chamber's time has been wasted. And when Miklatov tries to lend Subaru a bit of grace by calling him a good vassal, Emilia says he is not her vassal at all, breaking his heart with a single calm sentence. Subaru cannot share the truth that binds him to her, the curse that freezes time and crushes his heart if he speaks of return by death. So his next attempt to explain collapses into a list of debts and injuries as if she owes him, which is the opposite of what love should sound like. Emilia replies that if it is debt, she will repay it and end things, and she orders Subaru to stay under House Karsten's care with Rem, to heal while she returns to the mansion, to keep walking her path by rules rather than by pity or chaos. Ferris and Reinhard later check on Subaru, and Ferris makes it plain that Emilia already paid in a way you can't give back, which means Subaru has to accept treatment or her efforts will have been for nothing. A truth that makes humiliation feel permanent in a way that cannot be healed overnight. In the reprimand aftermath, Ferris snarks that it was better for one night to settle the anger than for a pack to tear Subaru apart later. And Marcus reflects that a short suspension is a smaller wound than a dead commoner, and a scandal that would poison a young campaign's beginning. Julius admits Subaru annoyed him, but refuses to claim personal grudges as motive, and he walks away holding both contempt for Subaru's conduct and a sincere respect for Anastasia's plan to be the kind of ruler the kingdom's finances demand right now. Meanwhile, the broader political picture is crisp. Crusch offers discipline beyond dragon crutches and a nation that will sweat for its strength. Anastasia offers fiscal reconstruction and reliable prosperity grounded in ownership. Priscilla treats victory as inevitable because the world itself dances for her. Emilia insists on justice and restraint with power she refuses to abuse, and Felt promises demolition to clear space for a better house. Miklatov keeps the rails on this strange train, turning riots into debates and debates into rules. While Bordeaux's apology shows that even an old man can be moved by a girl who frightens him simply because she refuses to take what she could seize by force. By evening, the capital is red in the last light, and even those who hate or sneer at Subaru can feel that the selection has begun in more than name, because 5 different futures have put their flags down in public. What began as a routine trip for healing turns into the opening move of a national test that binds ritual to raw feeling, as council rules and dragon pacts keep colliding with the need to be seen and treated fairly as a person. Priscilla's whim opens the palace door for Subaru, Reinhard's oath opens the dais for Felt, Ferris's skill opens Subaru's body to healing, and Julius's severity closes the door on 100 petty vendettas by exhausting the room's appetite for revenge, which shows how every opening carries a cost that someone else pays. Subaru pays in humiliation and separation, Emilia pays in isolation and the pain of being measured against a legend she did not choose, Julius pays with suspension, Ferris pays with the burden of healing a rival camp's problem, and Reinhard pays by vowing his sword to a girl who wants to smash the kingdom he protects. The selection's frame is now firm. 5 candidates, 5 camps, a 3-year runway until the Dragon Friends ceremony, and a month before that as the finish line, with every camp expected to govern and prove itself in deeds rather than speeches alone. Crusch's camp pairs iron principles with Ferris's healing pragmatism. Anastasia's pairs merchant rigor with Julius's ceremonial poise. Priscilla's asserts inevitability and punishment for anyone who forgets who she is. Emilia's forswears raw power for fairness. And Felt's wields demolition as medicine in a kingdom that has forgotten how to breathe. Miklatov's unflappable guidance keeps the palace from erupting into disaster, even when elders like Rickert shout and scoff at slum blood and merchant greed. Because the sage understands that rituals must bend to living truths or snap and stab the people they were meant to serve. For Subaru and Emilia, the night ends with truths neither can carry safely in public. His silence is enforced by a curse, and her fairness is enforced by a world that looks at her hair and eyes and sees a taboo rather than a person, which means both are alone even when surrounded by allies. Subaru wanted to say, "You saved me first," but return by death seals his throat in terror. So what comes out instead is a bad ledger of pain that turns love into a bill. While Emilia wanted to believe him, but chose instead to set a boundary that saves his life and her path. Julius and Ferris walk away with hard clarity about masters and methods, reminding everyone that a state cannot indulge every hot temper with steel. And Reinhard remains the quiet wall that even Priscilla will not test lightly. As lamplight replaces sunset, the city breathes like a forge. The 5 camps begin to work in the open, and the memory of jewel light in the Great Hall is as bright as the promise and pain it symbolizes. Because from this point, every step will braid private wounds with public duty. Subaru stands outside rank and title, but is tied to the center by timing, vows he cannot voice, and a stubborn heart that will keep trying to help even when help requires stillness instead of motion. The selection has truly begun in word, law, and consequence, and every path ahead will test pride, love, and the thin line between hope that gives strength and hope that turns into poison.